Hello, I'm Kevin Dietz, and welcome to our panel discussion, Faces of Addiction. Today we're talking about opiate addiction and heroin addiction and the impact on the community, and this has become such a big problem all over Metro Detroit, all over the country. We're going to start by introducing ourselves. I'm Kevin Dietz. I'm with our investigative unit. I do a lot of stories with families on addiction. I have a story coming up today at 5 o'clock with parents of a young woman who's been addicted to painkillers and heroin, and I've had an opportunity to learn a lot about this. Doc?
Well, I'm Dr. Frank McGeorge. I'm the medical reporter here at WDIV, but I'm also a practicing emergency physician, have been for 25 years in Detroit, and I've seen the actual heroin epidemic not just grow, but really continue over the decades. And I think that's what's important, is not so much that it's grown, but that it has actually continued and that it has changed its demographic. It's actually spread in different directions in our community. And that's, I think, something that, needs a lot of awareness. So that's where I would go with this. Katie?
I'm Katie Donovan. I'm the Executive Vice President of a nonprofit group called Families Against Narcotics. I'm also on the executive board of Operation RX, and I also am the National Director of Family Advocacy for Reliance Treatment Centers in Florida. In addition to being the mother of an addict, this was not my expectation ever, or ever thought that I would be in a position like this, but I ended up leaving my career and devoting my life to this because I saw what pain that we went through and other families that go through, and I want to use that pain now for purpose.
I'm Dr. Colucci. I'm the medical director of Henry Ford Macomb's emergency department. I've been practicing for 27 years in emergency medicine, and I'm the medical director of Operation RX, the group that Katie works with, and I've been doing that for 4 years now.
So we'd like to keep this interactive. We encourage you to send your questions in or your comments in, and we'll read those online as they come in and talk about this issue. I think the thing that just strikes me over and over again is when I talk to families who go through this is, I can't believe this is happening in my family. Like, where did this come from? How did we go from here to here? And then what a life-changing situation it is for not just the person addicted, but for the entire family.
Right. Well, Katie can speak to that.
Yes. In my family, we were that quote-unquote normal family, upper middle class. I was the PTO mom, the brownie leader, and my daughter, who struggled with addiction, was the honor roll student. She played sports. I even taught her catechism class when she made her first communion. So we were extremely involved parents, and just never, ever in a million years expected this to happen, or us to be affected in this way. And it was a slow process. It wasn't something that certainly happened overnight. It happened very slowly, to be honest with you. It started with prescription medication. She was dating a boy who played hockey, and he had been prescribed Vicodin due to an injury. And that became their party drug, I guess you could say, on the weekends. And they didn't think it was really harmful because it was prescribed by a doctor. They didn't really drink or do other things. It was taking a pill. And slowly that led to ultimately an IV heroin addiction and her being homeless and living in Detroit. It was very traumatic, and it lasted a solid 7 years of 17 treatment centers and 3 overdoses. You name it, it's happened.
And it's not a story that is that rare. I mean, various degrees of what's happened in different families, but this addiction is really rampant, right?
Oh, it's in Macomb, and in fact I was pulling stats last night, and in Michigan, Macomb County, Wayne County, and there's another county out on the west side of Michigan that lead the way in all counties in all Michigan as far as heroin overdose and abuse and opiate addiction and deaths. And it starts off just like Katie said, that you have these young people, athletes, they get a prescription, they have an injury, and they're never educated. I think we as physicians, probably from our colleagues who've been practicing for the years we've practiced, we're trained a certain way to give a number of narcotics for pain control. But now we're at an age that it's such an epidemic that we have a policy, and I believe it's a Henry Ford policy, that we are only given a limited amount. That we educate them. We have to talk to the parents and say, all you need is for 48 to 72 hours for some pain control. After that, there's really no need for it. I work with the NHL, and we have all kinds of injuries, and we use it very sparingly. We do not carry it in our locker room. And we just had a player, and again, I say you just need us for sleep for 2 days, and after that, we have other modalities that we can use. And we have to educate. It's our responsibility to start this process, to educate the parents, the kids. But if we don't, it's going to take a life of its own.
Well, and there's been a shift over the last, say, 10 or 15 years. 15 years ago, we focused on pain scales, pain scores, and we wanted to eliminate pain, which sounds like a really good thing to do. And at the same time, I remember when I was first training, Tylenol with codeine is about the strongest thing that was out there that we would commonly prescribe. And then all of a sudden, hydrocodone and other opiates, prescription or pill opiates became available. And so we began prescribing those more to treat the pain scales that we were now given to eliminate, et cetera. And it became a culture of eliminating pain. And I hate to say it, but to a certain degree, when you're injured, you're going to have pain. And the idea that you're going to try and eliminate all pain and create a pain scale where 0 is the goal is not only not necessarily reasonable, but it does lead to downstream consequences that we've experienced now 10, 15 years later. So this is something that I saw grow and evolve over the course of, just even my short career so far, and hopefully I say that only because I hope it goes on. But the point is, this is something that now we're having to reel back essentially because we overshot the mark. We were giving out things that were too strong. We were giving out too much of too strong pills. And then what happened was patients began to give it out to their friends, and patients began to share it with their family. And patients began to come back with the expectation they were going to get more because it not only treated their pain, but it eliminated some of the problems with life, so to speak. And so that's where that sort of addiction spiral happens, is that it goes from being something that is initially used to treat pain to something that's now recreational to make you feel better. And that's a transformation that is very common, and that, I think as physicians, we weren't necessarily as attuned to it then as we are now. And in fact, a lot of places have policies, very strong policies, against prescribing narcotic painkillers. And we still have patients that come in basically requesting, or in some cases almost demanding, narcotic pain medications. And we've had to take a fairly strong, hard line against giving out large quantities, or even sometimes in some cases small quantities. And it's important to note, in Michigan in particular, we have a way to track that. We can actually look online to see how often someone has been prescribed narcotic pain medications. And it's incumbent on all practitioners to look at that database, MAPS is what it is, and try and understand if a person is using legitimately or if they're perhaps abusing painkillers. But beyond that, obviously, it gets into the question of heroin, because that's not something that we've prescribed. That's something people have gone out to get. And, in Brittany's case, there was sort of, that's your daughter, there was sort of an economic decision. Maybe talk about that, because I think that's kind of an interesting transition point for a lot of ordinary people.
Sure. Once she started doing prescription opiates such as Vicodin, Percocet, her body became accustomed to it. And so instead of one working, now she needed to take 2 and 3 and 4. And these are very expensive to buy off the street. And when she stopped taking them, she would go into severe withdrawals, almost like the worst flu you could possibly imagine. And the only thing that would make that withdrawal go away was another opiate. Well, she had sworn up and down, this wasn't how I was raised. I will never do heroin, never. But it was less expensive, and it had much better effects. It didn't make her feel sick anymore, and it was much, much cheaper. Instead of, say, $30 a pill, she could get heroin for $5 to $10.
Right, but then that $5 to $10, you need more of it, and more of it, and more of it. I think that's kind of the interesting transition that people don't really recognize. Going from pills to heroin is not just a big jump. It's a line that you cannot go back from. there's a point of no return with heroin abuse, and so I'm not suggesting that people abuse prescription opioids either, but there is a very distinct difference. And if anybody is even contemplating using heroin, I cannot tell you strongly enough, that is a point of no return. You are going to do yourself permanent damage, because heroin works with your brain chemistry far more aggressively, far beyond anything that a prescription narcotic will do. It changes your brain chemistry in a way that the withdrawal is much worse and the craving is much stronger. So you get into a more vicious cycle of withdrawing, then craving, then working harder. And Brittany actually even commented to me, she was spending her whole day trying to get more heroin. And so you go into this cycle of withdrawal, and then craving, and then working to get it, and then getting it, and getting that fix, and getting that high, and then going into withdrawal again, and so on and so on. And it just ultimately consumes your life.
And not to mention what they're doing out there, because it becomes a financial decision to go to the heroin. It's a budget thing.
Right.
But out there, as you know, they're cutting it with fentanyl.
Right.
And that's where you get these people that might use it for the first time, and it's so powerful. I mean, they're dying.
Yeah.
So again, the drug dealers are making a business decision to cut it with fentanyl, to say, hey, that guy over there's got a really good one, and it's dangerous. We all know it's dangerous, but they're doing things now out there to make it even more. You don't know what you're getting when you go out onto the streets.
So is this perhaps like a warning sign where you become addicted to your prescription, or you're taking pills for recreational use, and then all of a sudden you run out. Your medicine cabinet at home is empty. You try and get some from your friends. You try and go and buy them on the street where you say they're expensive. Now you're out of money, but you don't want to go to heroin. Like, I'm not going to do heroin. I'm not going to. So do you start stealing things? Do you start selling things? Do you start are there signs like families can look for before they flip over, because it seems like once you flip over, you're talking about years or maybe a lifetime or never coming back.
Right. Well,
I think I deal with families on a daily basis who do struggle with this, and I actually just had an executive come to me, and he had a back injury and was prescribed Vicodin, and he became addicted, but didn't realize actually that he was addicted. He just thought, my pain isn't going away, and I need to get more, and I need to take more. And so when he called me up, he said, I don't think I'm addicted. I just don't know how to stop. So I don't know if a lot of people even truly realize that it is an issue until they do try and stop, and they're feeling the withdrawals from it, but they actually think that it's pain from not taking the pills. They think it's a legitimate back injury pain that they're still feeling. I actually did enroll that gentleman into a substance abuse facility, and as soon as he got out, he called me basically in tears, thanking me, because he truly saw what he didn't see before was other people who struggled with the same things that he did, and he had no idea that there were others like that.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't be on a prescription for an extended period of time.
No, the CDC even came out recently about instruction for general surgeons to say if you're having an operation, their CDC's recommendations is no more than 5 days of pain, narcotics, opiates for pain management. And I did a thing out in shock trauma that for pain management, it's multimodality. There's several receptors that you can go after to combat the pain. From the muscle relaxants to the anti-inflammatories, it's not all about just one. Monotherapy is going to get you in trouble, and it's just a slippery slope. Pain is, like Dr. Frank was talking about. Pain is a great feedback to say. So it's not like he said people are looking for the 0 pain scale. Well, that's not the appropriate thing either. You want some feedback. If you get to a 3, 4, maybe depending on your tolerance, but you want some feedback to say, oh, I shouldn't do that. Not just be 0 pain. It's you either had an injury or you had a procedure. You need to have feedback, and then we have to do the responsibility to educate the family, the patients, that this is what to expect. And I think we haven't done a good service, and I think it's a different culture nowadays that we are stepping forward to give that education.
And this isn't something that just happens to young people. It can happen to your parents or grandparents or your kids or to anyone. It's just, and is it? And can some people be on medication and nothing? They'd never become addicted to it? Is it something in the person's individual makeup?
Yeah, I mean, what I see is that people that have the obsessive compulsive, I mean, they get some on something, they tend to have the capability or propensity to have addiction of some sort. You know, if it's opiates or if it's some other gambling or whatever. But there's some familiar connection too. I mean, I had a young lady come in with her mom, and the mom was enabling the daughter whose dad had the same problem, and I couldn't understand it. I'm trying to talk him off the cliff, and it was like I wasn't getting anywhere. And I sat in there for 30 minutes trying to explain to them that we're setting her up for failure. We're setting up for a secondary problem because there's a evidence of a dependency, and we have to be careful with calling it addiction right out of the gates in the ER because we've only met them once. When you see a pattern, you can kind of assume that, but we have to say you've developed a dependency, which can lead to an addiction, which then can lead to heroin. So when you see a familial or you see again, a parent can probably feedback or the patient if they have any kind of obsessive compulsive, that'll lean them that way.
So there's so many layers to this, but like a really good first start, right, is clear your house of medicine that you're not taking anymore, right? You go in your own medicine cabinet and you'll see something that was prescribed maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. You don't need that. If you have a new problem, you get new medicine, right? Correct. And do you have to wait for one of these drug take-backs, or do you just destroy this stuff? What do you do?
They have drop boxes, and depending on different communities, that we're urging that when you're done with your medication, again, 2 to 3 days is my recommendation. You don't need it more than that. Go to these dispensaries that they have in the local communities.
And if you do legitimately need prescription narcotics, lock them up safely. So they cannot be, it's so common for someone comes over and asks to use your restroom, and they keep them in the bathroom cabinet, and they're easily accessible that way, but it's not safe. They need to be locked up. And I think it's real important also, it's what a big mission of FAN does, is really try and educate in partnership with physicians. We try and go into high schools and really educate the parents on this also, and that it's okay to say no if you are prescribed a large amount of narcotics, or any for that matter. It's okay to say no thank you. It's okay if your son has his wisdom teeth pulled and you're given a prescription of 30 Vicodin. It's okay to not get that filled and say no.
Yeah, it's an important thing to understand too, that we're not just talking about prescription opiates. We're talking about actually benzodiazepines, Xanax, Valium. We're talking about alcohol to a large extent. All of these drugs act together to make addiction worse. And so, it's not just one, narcotics is not just the only piece of this. It's really the whole big picture of alcohol, benzodiazepine, and narcotic addiction for the most part. And honestly, I guess I'd have to include marijuana in that now that we've had changing laws with marijuana use. So there's a much bigger picture involved, but clearly prescription narcotics are definitely part of it. And as physicians, we do contribute to that, and I think we have a responsibility to try and educate the public so that they don't request and or become ultimately addicted to these medications.
So, as a family, you sit down and you have a discussion about the dangers of this, about becoming addicted. You talk about preventative things like not leaving these around or locking them up. What do you do when you think that maybe someone in the family might be addicted?
So families do come to me. I'm suspicious. I think my brother has a problem. I don't know what to do. I'll ask a little history. What are their behaviors like? Have things changed? Have they lost weight? To get a good idea, a good feeling. And it's okay to approach your family and say, I'm concerned. I feel the number one killer is actually silence. By not saying anything, by sweeping it under the rug. Or if we hear your son's friend could potentially be abusing things, it's okay, honestly, to ask or tell that family, I'm concerned that I'm hearing this. It's also okay to tell your son or someone that you love, I'm going to drug test you. That's okay. That means I love you so much that I want to make sure that you're not struggling with something. And if they get real defensive and you don't trust me. How can you think this way? Well, that's also a big sign too.
And so then seems to be this stigma with heroin. So, like, oh, all right, prescription pills. All of a sudden, someone I know is taking heroin, and it becomes this, oh, let's not tell anyone. Let's not, that's not what you want to do, right? I mean, you really need to circle the wagons. When you get to heroin and you become addicted to heroin, it's as serious as it can get physically.
Yeah, and it's, and people I know in the community that I work, it's, it's not happening in my community because heroin's got a bad stigma on it.
Right.
But it's in the schools. You may want to try to ignore it. It's not happening in my school district. It's happening. It's infiltrated every school system.
Absolutely.
And it's there. And it's in the predominant areas. It's not just in the inner city anymore. Where I think when we grew up, it was in the inner city. And it was like, oh my gosh, it's everywhere.
And do we know if the schools are educating the kids? I've been to several of these assemblies, and they'll have people come in and talk. I mean, how big is it? Like when you compare it to, say, marijuana or alcohol or other problems facing kids, and how severe are the consequences if your kid does end up down this road?
Well, we do educate in the schools. I will be honest, though, it's difficult to have parents come out in the evening presentation. They feel, I talk to my kids about drugs. I don't need to go. This isn't my problem. And it is, or it could be. And we want to educate you as much as possible where this won't be, because it's not the drugs of yesterday. This is a completely different ballgame that we're dealing with now. That potentially you could try something one time, and let's face it, we all experiment as growing up, whether it's smoking or marijuana or trying alcohol. Unfortunately, the things that are out now, you experiment with, it could potentially take your life.
We did a story a while back, and we went to one of the college campuses, and we just sort of spot checked and asked people if they had prescription drugs, and lots and lots of them had them right with them in their backpack, and they weren't even their names on the containers or whatever. And there was this sort of, they would tell us, well, I can go. Bill has some coming in in 2 days, but I'm out for now, and if I can borrow a couple and then give them some back. And is that over with doctors? Has the Drug Enforcement Administration put a stop to over prescribing, or can that still happen? I mean, how much of this has to just be our responsibility at home to take care of our family and make sure they're not doing this, or is this proliferation of drugs just going to continue?
It's a combination. I think that there are physicians out there that are still overprescribing. My son had an ACL. Bottle came in, I took it, and I have a little bit of an advantage of my knowledge, but I took it and I navigated how much to give him. So it's kind of a combination that you're getting overprescribing, and if the parents have no idea, and then you have the problem where the kids will take the bottle and either have it in their backpack or take it to a party, somebody requesting it, knowing that you had surgery. Well, I know you got some pain pills, and your friend, who has not the best of intentions, takes it. And then again, they have these parties and they pour all these conglomerate of pills and take a handful at these parties. So it's a problem, but I think part of it is we're part of the solution that we can start, educating the family. Operation RX is doing their part with going into the schools as well. But it's not just one thing. We got an education, I think, is just starting to.
And to that point, actually, while it is our responsibility, the fact of the matter is prescription pills, heroin, whatever you want, is available out there. There are people that, either divert it, that is, they take it out of pharmacies and sell it on the street straight up, or they get prescriptions and they sell their prescriptions. But the point is, it's out there, and that's where the personal responsibility aspect does come in. And ultimately, physicians, pharmacies, the DEA can only do so much. But, it's an interesting thing that's actually happened with Norco, which is hydrocodone, also known as Lortab, Vicodin, a bunch of different names. the classification has actually changed, where before we could just write a prescription for a large quantity of it. We can't do that anymore. And in fact, it's restricted in certain pharmacies, the quantity that they have. And so what's happening now is the Norco or the hydrocodone supply out there is probably shrinking, which means that its street value is probably going to go up to a degree. But that's probably going to change the demographic of what gets used. So people may not use hydrocodone. They may go to, well, heroin actually. And so I guess the point is people will find an alternative. People will find a drug if they need a drug because of withdrawal or because of an addiction. And knowing, as sort of Katie said, watch for the signs and symptoms in your own family member. Don't be afraid to ask, friends and families if there's a problem or if you suspect something, because personal responsibility does carry an enormous amount of importance. Because otherwise, we can't police everything. We can't police everyone. And there's no reason that anyone should want to be addicted. In fact, I don't think that anyone does want to be addicted. But once you're in that trap, it's really hard, if not frankly impossible, to get out without help.
Young people can be so fearless, and one of the things that strikes me with the opiates is that they're not afraid of this at all because it comes from a doctor. And someone says, hey, I took this was fun, or this made me pass a test, this helped me focus.
That's a great point.
All these different things where suddenly the kid with the prescription is their own kind of doctor, saying, hey, this will help you with this, or how about this will help you lose weight. We talk to a lot of college-age girls who are taking various prescribed medications because it's helping them keep weight off.
We have probably the best chemists on the street. I mean, they investigate this. Either it's by curiosity. I don't think, like Frank said, I don't think anybody goes out there intending to get addicted. But part of it is experimentation. I mean, they've already Googled it, researched it, and looked at what are the effects I can get, or by word of mouth. This is, like you said, it helped me concentrate. It was great. Or, I slept like a baby. Whatever the case may be, or I didn't feel a thing. So they're looking for that thing. But again, they're not going in with the intention of getting addicted. But then it takes an animal of its own.
I talked to some law enforcement people. They were telling me how they would pull over some moms, and they thought they were drunk driving, and they would give them a breathalyzer, and they're completely sober, and then they would find out later that they were on some sort of prescribed medication, and the officer took a big interest in this, and he would ask them about that, and many of the moms would say, well, look, I got to do this and this and this and this and this, and then the only way I can get all this stuff done is if I get, if I take this medication or whatever, this prescription pill, and there's got to be some I guess just education about, hey, either you don't have to get everything done, or there's other ways to do that, or you can deal with stress through eating and exercise. I mean, these kinds of things. It sounds basic, but it really is this sweeping movement of people looking to pills to fix their problems.
Yeah, that's an important thing. We have to acknowledge the societal pressures that are on people and the ways that they're trying to escape those pressures or modify those pressures. And I don't know that there's an easy answer to that. I'm not going to suggest that there's some magic wand. But the fact is, people are looking for an escape, or people are looking for a way to make themselves feel better. And that's not really going to help. That's about all the only advice I can give is that that's not going to help. People need to actually look inside and figure out what their own limitations are without trying to stretch the envelope by using, basically prescription medications or other medications. Pills are not going to be the answer to life. Life is something that needs to work itself out. But society puts a lot of strange pressures on people these days, and it's really hard for people to ignore that and see beyond, I guess, the immediate pill solution.
Yeah, I mean, I have kids who are high school, college age, and they're all taking the ACT or the SAT, and their friends are saying, hey, I scored 3 extra points because I took Adderall, or so, like 3 extra points. Oh, that's the difference of going to this school and this school, and then even parents are perking up. What's this? How do you get on Adderall? And I mean, it sounds crazy, but there's people are so competitive. People are doing things like this. I don't think any parent sees that becoming an addiction of some sort, or any kid thinks, oh, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to become addicted. But once you become addicted, it can spiral very fast and quickly.
Yeah, and go ahead.
No, I do see that quite a bit with the competitiveness. That was a very good point. You know, as we raise our children, we always want them to be the best that they can be, and we support them in that. But I think there's also a lot of pressure for them, not only peer pressure, pressure to get good grades, be the best athlete. There's that big test coming up, and they literally will try anything because they don't want to disappoint people. And again, it may not be, obviously, I'm going to become addicted, but it's an added oomph to help them, not realizing the potential consequences that could come with it. And also, if they're mixing one medication with another medication, how fatal that could actually be, not knowing.
I recently saw the head of the FBI in a video. They're trying to get out there on YouTube and on the internet and trying to reach kids as much as they can. And I saw a video called "Chasing the Dragon," and I think it was almost getting near 1 million hits or something, or 1 million views or something like that. If you're a parent at home and you don't really know much about it, you hear this, and is that a good source? Have you seen that particular movie?
I have seen it. I think it's very well done, actually. I think, and I'm so grateful that the DEA has gotten involved the way they have to spread the education and the message. It's a very good tool to show with your children and sit and have an open and honest discussion about this, and continually to have an open and honest discussion about it. It's happening in literally every high school. We can't feel like it's not. It doesn't matter if it's a private school, upper middle class school. It's everywhere. There's actually a particular high school that I know of, that there's a certain hallway in a certain corner that everyone just knows if you need anything, you just go there. And this is not a low-income area by any means. And it's okay for kids. They have such pressure on them with social media, liking this and thumbs up for this. For them to know that I have to say no to something can be intimidating for them also when they've got this peer pressure around them.
So, but the kids, everyone needs to know, I guess, that this is as dangerous as any other kind of a drug or alcohol, or for some reason there seems to be out there this feeling that this isn't going to get me in trouble. This isn't good. I mean, your daughter ended up risking everything, risking everything for this craving, and that's not that unique of a story. This is something people need to know can happen to anybody.
Without question, can happen to anybody. And there's 28 deaths per day for opiate overdose in Michigan, and the number is staggering, and it's been crawling since we have new numbers here, but since 1999 to 2014, it's quadrupled. And I just had a discussion with my mom last night about the same thing, that she's like, oh, what about when you think it's as bad as it was when you were a kid? And I go, oh my God, are you kidding me? It's not even in the same area. But I think it's part of it is, they've gotten these medications, like you were saying with the Adderall. You're getting feedback, either sensory or results. And that's where it becomes inquisitive, and it's like, oh, I got a good feedback internally by receptors and sensory, or I got a good feedback by I got 3 extra points on my exam. Well, that spurs the behavior to move, keep going after that resource, and then it becomes an addiction. And like I said, it becomes dangerous, and it can either turn from Adderall, it can move into opiates, it can move into heroin. I mean, it's a slippery slope.
And heroin is easy to find?
Yeah.
Oh yes, it was delivered to my home. Honestly, right in the mailbox. There was nothing that she didn't even need to leave the house. It's very, very easy to find. It's in every area. The other thing that I see quite a bit are, as parents now, I think we feel the need to make things better for our kids. We don't want them to struggle or to suffer, and we don't want to hurt their feelings. And sometimes we don't want to ask, are you doing this? Or I'm going to search your room. We're afraid of hurting our children's feelings. And Also, if you're afraid that your child might be struggling and you approach them and they say, Mom, I can't believe you would think that, but I need that. I need that to take my test. I'm going to fail if I don't. You know, as parents, we always want to make our kids feel better, and sometimes we don't realize that they're addicted. Gosh, they must really need it. And it's wrapping our heads around what are we doing as parents. We can't make everything better for our kids all the time. It's okay to have them struggle. It's okay for them to fail at something. How else would they learn if we keep doing everything for them?
We have stories coming up all day today on Local 4 at 5, 6, and 11. Maybe some closing thoughts. You know, what you'd like to leave our viewers with, and how can people get help? If this is you're hearing this at home and you're saying this sounds like someone I know, what do you do? Doc, why don't we start with you?
Well, you know, I think there's a couple of issues. One, we're talking about families, and then we're talking about adults, so children and adults. On the children's side, I think, you know, for families, you know, everything that Katie has discussed is really an appropriate approach. For adults, though, who are already addicted or who may be sliding down that slippery slope, you have to recognize it, or hopefully your family or a loved one will recognize it, and you have to go out and want help and get help. And part of it is having some internal recognition that your life is going in the wrong direction, going down a slippery slope. And, you know, there are a lot of resources available online that can help you get hooked up with hopefully people that will help you get out of that cycle of addiction. That's, I think, really kind of an important message that I would want to get out to adults who are already addicted, because we spend a lot of time talking about kids and families, but there are a lot of other people out there that don't fit that mold, and you need help too, and that's where I think you need to actually go out and help yourself as well.
And I want to really stress to not feel ashamed that, again, silence is the #1 killer, and there are organizations out there that will help you no matter what. You can call me. FAN has a general email address that it can be routed to me. Just know that you don't feel hopeless or helpless. We are there to help you every step of the way with acceptance, no judgment, and we will get you to where you need to be and find that joy and peace in your heart again.
You know, and as Frank knows too, we've talked about going into the addiction. I don't know if we've really touched on people that are addicted or parents that have children in their house that have the addiction problem. They know it. They've taken them to the ER multiple times. They get the drug called Narcan, which is where I'm going with this, and to request with the physician in the department, in the ER, how do they get this medication Narcan? There's a government bill that's going through regarding the accessibility of Narcan, because, again, it's such a bad animal that if you wake up or go downstairs and your child's unconscious from an overdose, you want to be able to do something. And we've done it out of our department, where we've given parents that are concerned that we give them a prescription for the Narcan nasal mist to give it to them. And then there's some drugs that are out there that are injectable. We've supplied the Sheriff's Department out in Macomb. I think since 2016, the year of 16, they've saved the Sheriff's Department in particular, because EMS carries it. The Sheriff's Department, because usually they're first on scene to a possible drug house. Well, EMS is not going to go in there until it's safe. So the sheriff go in first to make sure it's safe. Well, if they see somebody unconscious, they want to be the first responder to give the Narcan. So I want that to be aware as well, that Narcan is available. You can go online or go to Operation RX, and we can help you facilitate that process.
Yeah, and in the story I'm doing today at 5 o'clock, the family I talked with, they wanted to make a point too that recovery is very difficult, and it really does take a lot of support, and you have to have a lot of patience, and people will get into recovery and they'll start doing well, and then they can slip up and you can be back to square one, and you really just have to do your best to get the support system that you can in place. And so we'll have stories all day today at 5 and 6, at 4 o'clock as well. The series is called Faces of Addiction. The idea there is no face of addiction. It can hit all of us. If it hasn't hit your family yet, it's likely at some point you'll know someone who goes through this. and we have put all our stories and all the resources on our website at clickondetroit.com. So come up to go to clickondetroit.com. You can watch the stories that we've done last night and today, this morning, and the stories that we do later today will be there as well, along with all the resources.